And we are live. Welcome everybody back to the Coach's Corner. So excited to welcome you to this edition of the Fitter and Faster Swim Platform Coach's Corner. I'm your host, Mike Murray, and today we are thrilled to introduce you to the head coach of the famed North Baltimore Aquatic Club, Coach Tom Hughes. Coach, welcome to the program. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Great. I'm going to do a quick introduction here of Coach Hughes. Coach Tom has coached swimmers to more than 500 national top 25, top 16, and top 10 rankings, including 81 number one rankings, 37 national age group records, and more than 450 Maryland LSC records. In addition, North Baltimore Aquatic Club won 11 consecutive ASCA National Age Group Team Championships. He's coached some of the best swimmers in the world as age groupers, including Beth Botsford and Michael Phelps. His athletes have gone on over the years to be competitive collegiate swimmers at a number of programs around the country, USA Swimming Junior National Team athletes and USA National Team athletes. Coach has served on the board of Maryland Swimming for more than 30 years in various capacities. And in 2015, Coach Hughes was awarded the National Age Group Coach of the Year. We are thrilled to have you, Coach. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
How is everything in Baltimore right now? Are you guys starting to come back around online? Is things up and running?
Yeah, we got back in on June 8th, at least partially, and we're back in. Not full blown, but the whole team's in. Everybody's swimming a little bit less than we were, but the entire team's in from our 8 and unders up to the senior kids.
That's fantastic. Now, how much planning goes into organizing the lanes, overlapping all of the social distancing guidelines on there? How much planning went into that?
It's just, just the fact that trying to run around and find facilities and pool space from summer clubs. We're in three different summer pools, and we just got back into Meadowbrook a couple weeks ago. They're in Baltimore City, and Baltimore City's had a little bit tighter guidelines as far as letting people back in, and they just let us get back in. It's just been nonstop negotiating and figuring out where we can get the most pool time, the biggest bang for the buck, essentially. We had a whole bunch of people offer, we have a 3-lane pool. Well, 3-lane pool where you can put 2 to 4 swimmers in a pool doesn't really help us out a whole lot. And we're pretty fortunate. We're in the one facility has 10 lanes, albeit they aren't all 25-meter or 25-yard lanes, are a little strange. One of them's a little strange size. Then we're in an 8-lane 25-meter facility, and then another 8-lane 25-meter facility. And then we do have we sort of turned a non-lap swimming pool into a 5-lane pool.
Unbelievable.
So it's been a lot of work, and then of course all the teaching the kids and the social distancing, the face masks. We're requiring our kids to wear the mask up into the pool before they get into the pool, and then when they get out to wear the mask and on their way out. And the older the kid, the better they're getting it. The biggest problem has been the younger kids because they don't get it, and it's been a little bit of a challenge, but it's working.
We're going through that same thing, and just the reminding of wearing the masks when they're on deck, and then the traffic patterns that we had to create to make sure for safety. That took the longest time. And we talk about this topic every week on Coach's Corner, but I don't think it's something that can be ignored because everybody is kind of dealing with the same thing. What are some of the things that North Baltimore Aquatic Club did for the athletes during the quarantine when we weren't swimming?
Well, we, pretty much like everybody else, the Zoom became, a godsend to communicating with the kids, and we did some group. We have 14 different groups, and we did some group meetings. Paul came up with a couple different blogs that we were sending information out for anybody, for parents and the kids. They were doing. It was mostly email, some Zoom meetings, and but it was. I had all of our coaches 2 to 3 times a week were communicating via email with each of their groups. So it's this whole thing, where I don't think maybe ended is not the correct word, but it at least stopped temporarily and hopefully ended, but probably right about the same time, because that stuff gets a little old, and I think everybody was getting antsy to get out and start doing something again. And,
Absolutely.
So it seemed to go well. It seemed people were very appreciative of us keeping contact with them, and so
I think that was the most important thing for us at Victor, was just keeping our kids engaged.
Right.
When I was younger, and I told this story to Coach Urbanchek. I was about 22 years old, and I got invited by Paul, I think, to visit NBAC, and I went, and you were on deck, and Urbanchek happened to be there that week, and I was following you guys around essentially for a day or two. You've been at some capacity involved in NBAC for 30 years. How has the team evolved in that time and handled so much success in a very short amount of time? How has the team evolved from when you began as an age group coach there?
Well, I came in there in '85, and really, the culture was built by Murray Stevens and Tim Pierce and the guy I replaced named Carter Warfield, who was their age group coach at the time, and it's sort of what, to some degree, as far as that went, it was sort of just the culture was there. It's sort of hard to explain. People come in with expectations, and they seem to know that they got a pretty good chance of reaching their expectations if they come over here. We're pretty. It's a committed, pretty much do whatever it takes to get the job done. If it means staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning, as I often do, 3 o'clock in the morning, doing stuff to get it done, that's what it takes, and that's what we do. And if it means driving an hour and 10 minutes every day to practice, which I do now, that's what we do. And so where it's certainly changed over time. I mean, back when I went in '85, we had it was right around 100 kids. In '80 and '87, Murray and I had a discussion, and we felt that half of them weren't really. It wasn't that they weren't good; they just didn't have the commitment level that we wanted. In 1987, we had 57 kids.
Wow.
And I mean, we had 57 kids, but I'm pretty sure almost all of them had at least triple, quadruple A times. And it could be argued that some of our best years are when we only had 100 kids. So we refocused things probably during that time frame to start, I guess, in essence, rebuilding the age group program, because at that time, we had 57 kids, and we probably had 35 senior type kids, and it wasn't very many younger 12 and under kids. So we had to sort of rebuild that, and we did it rather quickly. And to be honest, it was also the same year that Retrievers, Sid Burkott and Retrievers started, and Sid did the wrong thing. He said that he was going to become the #1 team in Maryland, Well, that's all Murray and I needed to hear, and it didn't happen.
Can you talk about why it's so important for the age group programs inside of a club to help drive performance?
Well, you have to, you know, I you have to be shaped like an inverted V. Your team. If you're not, you're going to be in trouble. And frankly, I was gone. I was gone from 2002 and came back in 2009, just after Bob came back. And the team had gone from, I left a team inverted V to a team that was shaped like a V. When I came back, they had 200 and, I don't know, 220, 200 kids. I had 11 8 and unders. And frankly, it, you know, a couple years ago, we really paid for that, because if, you know, the number of 8 and unders, 9 and 10 kids that are going to, one, you know, hopefully they all continue in the sport, but they don't. And we have a pretty good retention rate, but it's not only continuing in the sport, but how many of them are really going to continue to be committed, work hard, and you know, achieve at the levels that we would like to see. You got to have a lot of them, and you know, a team. If you want longevity, you have to be shaped like an inverted V, and you got to have probably twice as many 10 and unders as you do older kids, and it's hard to maintain nowadays. But you know, as soon as you see those younger kid numbers going down, you got to look at your team, because you got a problem.
Now, what are some things that North Baltimore Aquatic Club does to bolster those numbers in your 8 and under program, your 10 and under program? Is it stemming off lessons? Is it the reputation of your lesson program? How are you developing those groups?
Well, we did have a lesson and a lesson program, a stroke clinic program, and we don't right now, because we don't have the facility to do it, and the facility we were doing it at won't allow us to do that anymore. So and we'll leave it at that. So what I did was I started some 1 day a week, 2 day a week, you know, type of, you know, with the sole purpose of getting as many 9 and unders in as we can. That's still at the infancy level, and still playing around with exactly how to do it and how to get them in. So that's what we're doing. We and actually through all of this mess that we're all dealing with right now, we're actually today, for the month of July, have started a stroke clinic, and very, you know, obviously very small groups, and outdoor pools and whatnot. But yeah, and again, we're doing that for just younger kids right now at this point.
So we're going to jump right into identifying talent, because that's where your talent is coming from, those younger groups. And this is a question that I'm sure you are asked often, but when it comes to developing athletes like a Beth Botsford or like a Michael Phelps, what are the first things that you're noticing as a coach? And how did what you've learned from watching those initial from developing those initial thoughts, what have you learned to take into the other athletes?
Well, you mentioned Beth. The first time I saw Beth was in a summer league meet, and it was probably one of the sloppiest swims I've ever seen, and it happened to be backstroke. And she pretty much couldn't do much in the way of butterfly or breaststroke. She could do them, but the thing that I saw was she just sat on top of the water. I mean, she basically just skimmed across the top of the water when she was swimming backstroke. And I thought, wow, this is, you know, most kids that are swimming sloppy are sinking, and she was sort of the opposite. And so that's probably the first thing I saw with her. But and that was actually prior to her. That was sort of, I saw that and I said, I want to get this kid on the team, and we did get her. And in her case, just to give you an idea of Beth, is her first 2 weeks of practice, she cried every single practice. Because she had never done anything. I mean, we weren't doing a lot.
And how old was she at this time, Tom?
9, I guess, almost 10. And I timed her shortly after she turned 10 in September, and she went 100 back because she was a summer league swimmer, so she never swam anything over 25. And she went 124.9, 100-yard back in September in a practice. And by December, she was in the 104 range, I believe. And then she broke the national record in March at 101.
All in the same year.
Not even a year. It was 7 months?
7 months.
6 months. And, and that was just another thing, which it may sound strange. And I had one recently in the last couple of years. Some of these young kids are really, really bright. And these kids, that's almost more important than how good a swimmer they are. If you got a good teacher, good coach that can teach them what to do, they're really good. I almost think you ought to forget, in some cases, almost forget their swimming. I mean, if they could swim a little bit, sit a little kid down and talk to him. And if you can have a legit conversation at 9 or 10 years old, you might want to say, "Hey, let's try this." So she was a lot of fun to work with. She really wanted to do well, and we didn't overdo anything with her. She was hour and a half, maybe 5 days a week. It wasn't anything ridiculous, and she just listened and did, and it's like every day she cried at practice. The next day she was back there. And almost knowing she was going to cry again, but and then I guess somebody like Michael. I mean, Michael, frankly, he was in the sport because his sisters,
right?
swam.
Whitney and Hillary.
I mean, I got to tell you right now, if his sisters weren't swimmers, you never would have seen Michael Phelps in the pool. I totally believe that. That Dad, he would have been playing a land sport, and when they came to the team, Michael was only 2, and Whitney was 8, and I guess Hillary was 10, and so Michael was just sort of tagging along, but and to some degree he was almost tagging along until the first thing, other than him being a decent 8 and under and a decent 9-year-old swimmer and things like that. The first wow thing was we had another team up from Teresa Andrews, who was on NBAC, won gold medal in 80. She was coaching a team in Virginia, and she brought her team up to swim with us, with the group I had at that time. And again, we were very small. So Michael was in a group I had a group. We couldn't make small groups because we'd only have 3 or 4 people. So, I had a group of about 30, and it was ranging from, 10-year-old Michael to a 16-year-old, junior nationals type swimmer. But at any rate, we did a 500 kick, and he kicked under 6 minutes in a 500 free kick.
At what age? At 10.
and I was, holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah. And in fact, we were just talking on the National Age Group Committee with that about, how to get some competition back. And I said, man, that might be something to look into is how good a kicker was at a young age, or young kids, at how good a kicker they were, how important that was to their overall development. But, this is one example, and I don't know that really tells you anything, but that was probably the first thing that just wowed me. I mean, and frankly, with Michael, it was sort of like, okay, here's a little kid, brother of a couple of really good girls on our team. So sure, you can come swim with us.
Right.
Well, to some degree, it was like that, and
Sure.
because he was doing all the other sports and whatnot, and he still pretty much made every practice that he was supposed to be at, but so anyway, I guess, and in general, I just look for kids that like I said before, I think you can talk to young kids. I mean, they're not dummies. A lot of them are smarter than their parents, and I think if you can get that out of them and pull out, let them think on their own a little bit. It's amazing how much further those kids can go than the kid that's just raw talent that can't, figure out how to turn a doorknob.
So it sounds like one of the things that you're using for recognizing talent is creating that relationship so you have a better idea of how intelligent your athletes are.
I can't sit down there and say I give them an IQ test on their way in or anything,
right?
But you can pretty much tell when you talk to a kid and how quickly they pick something up, or how, which again will have a little bit more to do when we're grouping kids. The maturity level of a kid has a great deal to do with it. It's not, the way they think. Okay. We're not going to put we're not going to put a 10-year-old with a 16-year-old, but we may be able to put a 10-year-old with a 12-year-old that's also at the same level. So yeah, I think being able to listen, I always tell the kids, I said, kids just naturally just chat. And I try to get across to them how much more important it is to listen than to talk. And it turns out the listeners are usually the better ones.
Sure. To pair with that, this is a really interesting esoteric question that somebody gave me the idea for. Are attitude and effort inherently part of the talent process?
Oh, absolutely. And I think to a large degree, that's one of the things. The attitude of the kids has evolved into probably not a great thing. So now, they're too much. They get handed too much now. And 25 years ago, man, you said you told them they're doing whatever, they would do it. Nowadays, you tell a kid they're rolling their eyes, they're or they won't try. Some of them, they're much more difficult to, and that's part of our job as coaches anywhere, not just with us, is to shape that attitude, to direct it, to use it in a whatever it is. I don't care if they're a little bit of a snippy kid type of whatever, use that in a good positive direction. But I think that makes our jobs nowadays a lot more difficult, is just the general attitude that they, I guess, let's face it, they're learning at home and learning outside of the pool area.
One of the things I think that a lot of people have heard or may have witnessed over the years on pool decks with Coach Bowman and Michael is they did have some of that back and forth relationship because their personalities were so different. When you were coaching Michael in that group, what was it like when he was younger?
Well, you know, he was a crier. He sort of set himself up a lot and got picked on a lot. And I mean, a little of that was because he was a little kid, and the little kid, and you know, by the time he was 10 and 11 in my groups, he was kicking most of their butts in the occasion. So, you know, some of them would sort of would pick on him a lot. He'd have his little. He'd get tired and cry, you know, just like any young kid. He was really totally normal, and you know, I don't think he was very competitive. I mean, oftentimes I would tell him that somebody was talking smack about him or something before he went up there and swam, and that would get him, you know, the worst thing you could do with him and with some of the people as he got older was tell him he couldn't do something. I mean, if you were a competitor, that was the best thing for him.
Right.
Because he would do something. He went to Bob a week before his 12th birthday. So, you know, I never really had to, I had to get on him like any other little, you know, 10, 11-year-old boy you would have to, but there weren't nothing like what evolved as, you know, Michael, the adult with Bob. And, but I got to tell you, and this is just sort of having witnessed. I think I was the only one that actually coached all three of the Phelps at one point or another, and knowing them pretty well, and witnessing at least a number of years, either fairly close or from afar. Those people that profess anybody could have coached Michael Phelps are so wrong. And Bob, you know, I mean, the job he did with that guy is amazing. And you know, the things that Bob had to work around with Michael during some of his difficult times was, there were some pretty nice blowouts that I understand. I heard about, and I did see a couple of them here or there. But hey, that's part of the process.
Right. And one thing, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because when we have Bob next week with Brett Hawk, that's going to be the first question, because that's always something that you hear coaches say. Anybody could have coached this guy. Well, I want Bob to address that directly, because it's so hard to see the whole story. You know, we see pieces of it, and it's a great segue into my next question, which is the longevity of the relationship between Bob and Michael and how you guys set that up at North Baltimore. That's an incredibly long period of time to coach the same athlete.
Yeah, you know, you always hear, I mean, a lot of what I have been told and grew up with, you know, Murray or whatnot would be 3 to 4 years or whatnot. And, you know, that whole thing sort of, you know, says the opposite.
Right.
And there's certainly some other examples of some, you know, fairly long time relationships with their coaches. And frankly, you've seen, you know, a number of kids, you know, older kids leave their coach and never perform again, you know, the way they were. So, you know, Bob, to some degree, and Bob would have to tell you, but to some degree, that was Murray's enticement to get Bob there, was just, you know, him and Michael and a couple other kids. And I mean, I'm not sure anybody can say we would have ever expected to see Michael Phelps do what Michael Phelps did. But, by the time he was 11, we could pretty much tell this kid was going to be pretty good.
And you planned for it. You planned
And,
for it.
well, and I think to Murray's credit, I guess, is bringing Bob in and bringing a senior coach to work with him.
One of the most important questions is the next one, Coach. A lot of times when, as coaches, we're cognizant that we have this unbelievable talent, and we tend to maybe get hyper-focused, especially us young coaches. We get hyper-focused on that athlete, and we might create an atmosphere or the misperception that everything we're doing is about one athlete. What do you do in your program to kind of mitigate that? And how do you make sure that everybody feels they're as important as anyone else?
Well, again, I mean, I'm not blowing our own horn here, but we've been pretty fortunate to always have a number of kids, and yeah, we've had a Michael Phelps, but then we've had some pretty good kids coming up behind him or right next to him, or it's never been a one swimmer club, I think the door is open. I think it's always been open for anybody to jump into that door if they want to go there. And certainly as I've grown to find out, let's face it, Bob saw as well as others saw something with Michael, and boy, they went with it, and he certainly had some other good people too. But I mean, we've always had. I guess the bottom line is you got to be a little sneaky with it. Okay? You never really show that all these kids got to be treated individually. There is, you can talk. Yeah, we want it to be a team sport as much as possible. But it's more like in this sport, you want everybody to be proud of your team and be proud you're a member of the team. But it's, if you got 20 kids in your group, you got 20 different things going on, and you can't treat. I know I've gotten when I was younger, I got in trouble over and over and over again because I always generalized things. So you get 20 different kids going home and telling their parents you said 20 different things. And
right.
and half the time, and half of those were some really bad misinterpreted things. Right. So I think you just gotta, I heard one coach, and I can't even remember who it was, but say every practice you got to make sure you talk to every kid at least 2 or 3 times. Doesn't matter what you say to them. You just got to acknowledge them, and our culture is a work hard type of group, so it's there for every kid, and we talk about Beth Botsford and Michael Phelps. Well, personally, I'm pretty proud of a whole lot of other people than than just that, and people that nobody would ever hear of, but I mean, one year we had the first and second ranked. In fact, it was 2 seasons in a row. I think the first and second ranked 11-12 girls 400 medley relay with 8 different girls. So, I mean, we've always been pretty lucky to have, and you leave the door open for anybody to do. We group our kids in ways that tries to give that kid the best chance they have to do as good as they can. And I mean, it's like anything, the fastest kids, everybody thinks the reason they're faster is because they get more attention. And frankly, in some cases, they almost get less attention. The kids that are doing well are the ones that do everything you tell them to do, and you don't have to battle with them.
Right.
So, I just, it's important just to communicate with all kids and make sure they know they have the same opportunities as anybody else.
How important is challenging age groupers inside of a workout? What does that look like at North Baltimore?
We swim our practices fast. I mean, that's what we want to do. We want to practice fast. You know, pretty much everything's on the, you know, from our warm up down to our cool down, they're on intervals. It's not just, you know, go out and swim an 800. It's, you know, it's an 800 split up into 50s or 100s or whatever it might be. And we do a lot of racing and you know, and these kids know I expect best times in practice. Stand them up on the block after a warm up and say, let's do a best time. And you'd be surprised how many kids do that. If they believe they can do that. When I was gone and went to another club, I did that. I don't know, maybe the second week of practice. I stood them up and told them they were going to do a best time. They looked at me, this is practice. Yeah. And what are we practicing? We're practicing to do best time. So, you know, I certainly don't ignore technique and things like that. But you know, again, even from a technique standpoint, you got to put a little bit of speed into it because you can't, you know, I find that swimming things slow is not always conducive to doing things right. So yeah, I mean, it's just a competitive nature of trying to be the best, and for each kid to try to be the best they can be.
Coach, we have Megan Hughes, one of your former swimmers, is in the comments, and she said she remembers doing a set on a Saturday of 4 times 2,000 yards free, and Beth Botsford did it all backstroke.
Well, yeah. Beth did a lot of crazy things. Beth swam. I mean, there have been other people who have done it too, but one meet she swam a mile in backstroke, and we'll challenge the kids, and I don't think, you know, we've been pretty fortunate that, and again, it's because of the culture that was built by the you know, the Murray and whatnot, that, you know, the kids come in expecting to work hard, and the norm is, or the people that, or the abnormal is the people not working hard, and you know, they get lost in the shuffle. It's everything we do is about is really geared towards I guess success and to use the old excellence term. So.
Right. That's part of the North Baltimore mission statement.
Right.
The disciplined pursuit of excellence. I've always liked that.
Which a lot of people have. It's just, you know, and if you know, it's okay. It's like one thing, even now where it's, you know, people seem to think it's bad. I don't think, I think it's positive coaching by telling people they're doing things wrong. Okay. What good does it do a kid to swim a race that was absolutely horrendous? And, you know, and I've stood on the deck plenty of times, and I don't even know the kid. I can tell it myself. That race was terrible. And the coach say, nice job. And I'm like, really? You know, and what's a kid learning from that? And that's, you know, to me, that's almost negative coaching. That's not positive. It's you got it. These kids can take a lot more than what people think they can take. And when you tell them, I mean, yeah, okay, there's sometimes my little thing with the kids I coach is, and for years, I just, when it's such a bad, it's usually, you know, practice is a whole different ball game of how you're dealing with them. But at a meet, if it's just one of those races where who knows what was going on, I just stand up like this, pretending I'm holding a bowling ball, and then I go and roll a ball. Okay. And the kids that have been with me a little bit understand it. It puts a smile on their face, but at the same time, they know that yeah, that was really bad. And then, you explain to them what, or ask them, what were you thinking? Or what was that? But, I just think it's really important to let kids know what they're doing wrong. And
owning
nowadays,
their own mistakes.
yes. And nowadays it's such a, too many people get uptight about that. And it's just wrong. I mean, I just, you got to, for a kid to get better, they got to know what they're doing wrong.
Absolutely. Coach, when you're working with any age grouper, high level, middle, just learning how to swim and race and compete, I think a lot of times coaches are thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead of where the athlete should be in the process instead of focusing on the present. What can I do right now in practice to get better? Can you talk a little bit about how you get the athletes at NBAC to kind of focus in and think about what they're doing in the moment?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, I think we're always looking a little ahead, honestly. But there's obviously steps along the way to get there. And as I've gotten, whoops, let me kill this. That's how bad I am with electronics. Can't even figure out how to turn my phone on. So lead me in again. What was?
That's all right. We're talking about how a lot of coaches often jump 2 or 3 steps ahead in the process.
Oh, right. I mean, we're always thinking ahead, but we explain to them there's steps along the way to get there, and they have to go through those steps. And I think with age group kids, a lot of times you have these kids that, they're pretty good at one stroke, and that's all they want to do is the one stroke. And that's probably where I find the tough. We're an IM based team. We want a kid to be decent at everything, and then we'll figure it out when they're 15, 16, 17 years old or whatever, or maybe never figure it out and have all those options. And one of the toughest things is to drill into these kids that you got to get better with these other strokes, and I think that's a way to sort of bring them down, even if the kid's thinking, way up here with a particular stroke. Well, you got to get better with, we can go into 80 different scenarios with that, but,
right.
I don't know that really answers the question, but we don't rush. I don't think we rush anything. I think we take steps along the way. We do pretty much all of the age, the quote age group, which that's a whole different discussion as what is age group. But
I'm with you on that.
But the quote non-senior thing, they're doing every stroke every week, and maybe slightly.
You got a lot of pools running, Coach. It's not your fault. You got too many pools going.
It's important. Well, I think I know what it is, but gosh, I lost my train of thought there. You
were talking about not rushing kids through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that they all learn all the strokes through. I mean, sure. Especially, the kids' bodies are changing. What's a great stroke for one of them at 10 may not be that stroke at 14 years old. And if they only have one stroke, they're done. And trying to learn things at 14 and 15-year-old is really, really difficult. Is it done? Sure, but it's much more difficult. And right. So I think one of the biggest things as far as not rushing along or thinking too far ahead is to keep working on everything. And our kids do probably I would say no more it's probably split pretty much down evenly with each stroke and then an IM day here or
Yep.
there.
So thinking about training and developing these athletes, the balance of volume and technique is always at the epicenter of debate in the coaching community. It's one of the main components of developing athletes at any level. What's your philosophy been in terms of the progression at NBAC, and how do you teach your coaches that philosophy?
I've gone first. My bit of an evolution, I guess, here is, years ago it was pretty much all about how much yardage did you do. Really didn't have anything to do with anything else. That's the first question. And I bought into that type of stuff at one point. And all my workouts, here's how much yardage we're doing, and blah 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 blah. I don't do that anymore. I can tell you about what we do. I basically, my workouts are done by time. Okay, I have an hour and a half. I want to get the most I can, and not yardage wise, but I want to get the most as far as skill wise, as far as whatever I'm doing that day, aerobic wise, anaerobic wise, whatever it might be. I don't even look at the yardage anymore. Now I'm also not a type. We're not going to go in and do 1,000 yards in an hour and a half. I mean, I know we're going to get a decent amount. And again, that varies depending on what level we're doing. And I think I've sort of, all the coaches are like that. Most of our coaches in one form or another were teachers, either are or were. And I still stress that big time. I don't care how many laps you swum. I don't care how many NCAA championships you've won. I'll take a teacher over any of those to become a good coach versus something like that. And, I've stressed that before. One of the first things I look at is have you taught anything before? And if you're a good teacher, you can become a good coach. If you can't teach, to me, you can't really be a good coach. So
I heard Coach Bowman say, I think of workouts in terms of time when he's putting something together.
There you go.
Yeah, that's no doubt coming out of North Baltimore. One aspect of coaching age group swimmers that's really evolved, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years has been the components of dryland and doing different things to develop some athleticism. What are you guys doing at North Baltimore in terms of the dryland, and how many hours a week are those kids doing dryland?
Well, we're doing basically not enough. I think it's pretty important. Part of the aspect of all of that is you run out of time. And with the older kids, okay, you might be able to go at 2.5 hour, maybe some I've seen go 3 hours with throwing dryland in there. You can't keep a 10-year-old there for 3 hours. Okay. So we do some. It's basically body weight, based, things like that. Little bit of medicine ball to get a little bit older. I would love to do more dry land with them. I mean, our dry land program I think is really good when it gets to the older kids. They do a nice job with it. We've gotten the coach that's actually putting together those things has done some workouts for us for the younger kids. And we were able to do that a lot over the 3 months we were out. But again, I think it's really important. We're also guilty of not doing enough of it, and we got to try to figure out a way to make it work.
Sure. If you had to ask your athletes, Coach, what their favorite set is with Coach Tom, what would they tell you it is?
Probably not what my favorite one is, but I don't know, and I know many of my sets have been as most of us have, stolen from somebody else. And one of my favorite sets, and the kids sort of like it. I can't tell you exactly what might be their favorite. But this one they seem to like is when, and you can do it any distance. You can do it hundreds, 200s, 400s. I guess you could even do it bigger than that. But you go 100 free, 100 free IM, 100 IM all in the same interval, or you go 2, 2, and 2 all the same interval. So obviously it gets a little tougher as it's moving along. And what I find the key to that set, it's a great set. I've gotten some great 200 IMs at the end of a set out of that. The key is to get them to push the 200 free IM, so it gives them a couple seconds of rest before the 200 IM. But
are there any benchmarks that they know about that they're trying to challenge themselves to get to on a set like that?
Well, I do. It all depends where we're at and what we're doing. But I will give them a plus 10, plus 8, plus 6 type of deal. And the reality, how many of them actually do that? It's varied. It's
right.
varied. But again, it's challenging them to do something, and I'll do things. There's some days where I'll challenge them to do things that I know they can't do, or I know they won't make, but I want to see them try to make it. And then there's other days where it might be a couple days after something like that. I'll challenge something that to me isn't very challenging, and it probably isn't, but it's a challenge so that they're successful with something, because they got to be successful at times, and you have to give them some things that they can be successful with, instead of just discouraging them by not making something. But I often, after some of these really tough things, I tell them flat out, I said, I knew you weren't going to make that. I just wanted to see how close you could get to it. And
so one of the biggest aspects of coaching age group swimming, and when I say age group swimming, I'm talking 18 and unders. So you can jump in with your experience here too, but it's also coaching the parents and educating the parents as much as you can. But oftentimes with a high achieving athlete, working with parents can be challenging at times. What are some strategies that you've used, especially with some of the athletes who have been in a higher achieving level, to help educate parents?
Yeah, well, my younger experience was not really approaching it not necessarily the right way, but just sort of leaving it alone, to where you have mom and dad, when the kid first comes in, oh, we just want them to have fun. And then they start getting better, and it's like, well, why aren't they qualifying for this meet? So you've got to intercept it somewhere between those two thoughts, and explain to them what the process is. What I found, we have our group parent meetings, but to be honest, they're sort of okay. You've got to, as much as possible, have individual discussions with the parents. I do a little picking and choosing, is when I think a particular one may need to get educated a little bit more specific versus the general education that we all try to give our parents. But the one-on-one things is usually, and it can be, I've had some pretty, I've told parents they're the worst parent I've ever coached a kid before. And, but ultimately most of them will get it and understand it. And, we had a mother who was yelling and screaming at their kid when they didn't do a best time, literally right out of the stands. And this is not happening. So I brought her in after the meet, and with the husband, and the husband's just quietly sitting there. And the woman legitimately didn't understand why it was wrong. And I told her why. Her kids were terrified of the mother. And, she started crying. She broke down, started crying because she didn't even realize she was being that much of an idiot. And I think a lot of parents are like that. They just don't know. And you just have to, I've been pretty successful in having these one-on-ones and turning people around. They just don't know because nobody tells them. The only thing they hear are, some other parent up in the stands who's obnoxious, and that's who. And you sort of just have to try and intercept all of that before it gets out of hand. And there are parents that are never going to get it. And geez, man, and somebody's not getting the message here. There are parents that just won't get it or understand it, but you got to make the attempt nowadays. Nowadays, it's really important because they all seem to be at least at first tentative or letting their kid alone, and you just got to express to them the importance of the coach swimmer relationship and how important that is, and keep the relationship with the parent. But so just communicating just trying to get in there before it gets to the next level.
So we all try to develop systems that we have in place in our clubs for the group dynamics, who moves up when, what time is the right time. That can always be problematic. How do you handle that at North Baltimore?
Well, it's always a stressful time for normally it'd be this time of year.
Right.
And I mean, certainly there's the coach run clubs and the parent run clubs, which there are different dynamics you got to deal with there with who you're moving and how you're moving and whatever. Our parents, our families pretty much know that we're the decision makers, the coaches, and we're going to put your kid where we believe it's the best, and we'll explain it to you if you have any questions about it, but we're not going to change what we're doing because you want it done differently, and you constantly run into. I think we've made, and I'll put it on me, but I think I've probably made more mistakes moving a kid up too fast than slowing the process up.
Right.
And that's not to say I don't want to see, a good young kid keep going and straighten out, but there's so many factors that play into that. Do you want to, you want to stick a really good 13-year-old and stick them up there with a bunch of 15, 16-year-old boys that are, they may be great swimmers and whatnot, but I guess you just got to win the trust of the parents and just explain to them that you're doing the best for their kid and make them understand that you are doing the best for their kid. And we usually end up showing them, and that's pretty much what all that conversation usually is right at the beginning. But once we get into it, they either accept it or continue to complain. But and we do our best to dwell. But we're not moving a kid because Johnny carpools with Susie. It's just not happening.
Right.
And you got to stick to your guns, which you believe. And we've been wrong before, for sure, and we'll fix it when we see that. But often you're playing. you're planning in July or June or July of how you're going to group these key people, and then you get into September and October. It's like, ooh, I made a mistake on this one, or
Right.
or whatnot. You make those little adjustments. You just got to explain to the parents, hey, you're the professionals. We've done this over and over. This is what we think's best, and if we've made a mistake, we'll fix it.
Right. Coach, you have a 12-year-old phenom girl who makes her first junior national cut, summer junior national cut. Are you taking her with the 9 or 10 other 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds to the meet? And how do you have that conversation with the parent?
Well, we've certainly, that's even a funny little situation, because you got half the parents that want them to go, and half the parents that maybe, actually, there's not too many that don't want them to go.
Right.
Okay. Most of them wanted to push them along. And for the most part, we've certainly been in that situation.
Yep.
where we've had a lot of fair number of young kids make that level meet. And, I've done it both ways, not sent them, depending on what the makeup maybe of the rest of the team is, and because you want that kid to be comfortable with what they're doing too. I personally, to some degree, and especially at that age, I don't care what the meet's called. Okay. Oh boy, I get to go to Futures, so what?
Right. Right.
It doesn't matter. And I'm constantly trying to stress that don't get hung up with what a meet is called. It does, if you do this fabulous time, nobody cares what meet it was done at. And those meets will be there for you when you're ready to go. And, it even comes into, is a kid ready for that experience to go to junior nationals and be at the bottom end, or do you send them to sectionals and let them be at the upper end? I think it's an individual thing as to what might be best for the kid. And again, I'll also point out what might be best for the kid, not necessarily for the coach.
That's right.
Because unfortunately, I think there's a little too much of that going on too, is sending a kid where the coach wants to be or whatever.
Right.
And, so I think, I can't think of an example where we've had an issue with a parent that, we've had some of them as they get a little bit older, and we say, oh, we're not going to that meet for this reason, or this reason. We're going to go to this meet, which again, to my point of who cares what the meet's called. And you break a world record, you break a world record. It doesn't matter what the meet's called.
Absolutely. When a team like NBAC produces some of the most famous swimmers in the world, it can create some lofty expectations. As coaches, we understand that type of atmosphere can be a two-sided sword. On the one end, it gives them the opportunity to see what's possible. And then on the other, they're thinking to themselves, I'll never be that fast. When you walk into your pool at Meadowbrook and you look on the wall and you see, Anita Knoll and Michael and Beth and Katie Hoff, how do you handle that with your families?
Well, with the ones we have, frankly, once they get on the team, it doesn't faze them. Okay, they feel like they're on a place where they will be able, not, whether they think they can get to that level or not is another thing, but I think they feel like they'll find out how good they can be. Where the problem is exactly what you said. Oh, I can't be that good. As far as getting new kids in, and it's like, one, you don't have to be that good. That even to us is a teeny tiny percentage of the people
right.
that come for NBAC. So yeah, you sort of hit it on the head. Sometimes that type of success is actually hinders you getting new people, because they're sort of scared or intimidated to come to your club, because they think,
right.
just like you said, they're not good enough. And we got plenty of people that aren't good enough, but hopefully they're going to be good enough. down the line.
Talk about some of the things that you do as a coaching staff to illustrate the importance of culture at NBAC. What are some things that your staff is doing to help teach the kids the culture of where you want the program to be and what you guys are striving for every day?
Well, I think at the various levels, at least as far as, you go down to a lower level where the kids can actually comprehend and understand, you throw out what this person did or what that person did, and they can relate to it a little bit, obviously, because they were on our team. We have things, we're constantly going over, as they get a little older, going over rankings and, how many kids we have in this event or that event. And we have, I've been working on it for many, many moons, but on an all-time top 25, our team records were pretty ridiculous at one point. I mean, I guess they still are. Yeah. And to have a kid, say, well, you got to, let's challenge to get the record was a little crazy. So a bunch of years ago, I started putting together a top 20, all-time top 25, which is also a little ridiculous, but not as ridiculous. And I mean, I go like 11, 12 girls, to get on our all-time top 25, you got to be under 2 minutes in a 200 free, which, okay, a lot of people out there have had certainly 12-year-old kids go under 2 minutes, but have you had 25 of them? And
right.
And I'm just saying it's tough, but at least things like that are achievable for a kid to think about and try to do, and they have other people to look at, Anita Knowles, Beth Botsford's, and Beth's always been really, really good. Whenever she's in town, she comes by and goes to where the little kids swim. And, I mean, I guess it's getting to a point where they don't know who she is, but when we say she won a gold medal, then they figure that one out. But, it is nice to have all that history and have, the many, pretty fast swimmers that we've had to be able to try to motivate the kids, say, this is where you are. And, you're swimming there, we can do the same thing for you. And even the coaches that haven't been there as long, I guess none of them have been there as long as I have, but, I haven't been there really long. I'm telling you, if you don't get on the bandwagon with us, you just won't last. You just initially get in there, and and you start talking about those things with the kids, and a lot of them it sinks in. I mean, yeah, there's certainly kids that it goes boom like that, but a lot of them sink in, and they want to try and do something like that. And just the fact that they want to try and do something like that is a plus.
Was when a 10-year-old Michael Phelps was on your pool deck, was he asking you at times to be challenged, or were you trying to chase him around? We all know he had a ton of energy as a 10-year-old. What was that like?
He was never, I don't think he was ever asking, but he was really easy. I mean, you could throw a challenge out at him and he would go after it. And
even at 10.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He was probably, I'm going to go as far as saying, and they certainly weren't the fastest. They're certainly a lot faster right now, but I guess it was probably around the 1995 Eastern Zone meet. He and a young man named Rory Cannell and Michael Phelps had the most unbelievable. Michael missed, I think it was 4 or 5 national records by less than a second total combined. And, you know, it was like 2/10 in this event, 1/10 in another event, 100th in another event. But those two raced every race they were together. And, you know, at that point, the national record in the 200 free was, I think it was 2 minutes, 0.5 or something like that. And Cannell actually beat Michael, and he went 2 minutes, 0.7, and Michael was 2 minutes, 0.8. And it was just that type of meet.
Was that in Pittsburgh?
That was at, I think it was at Princeton.
Princeton. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Princeton. But it was just one race after another. They were just battling each other out, especially the freestyle races. Yeah,
Tom,
so he was easy to challenge.
What advice do you have for that family of the 8, 9, 10-year-old who are posting all over social media that their son or daughter is the next Michael Phelps, or that their son or daughter is the next Beth Botsford or #1 ranked swimmer?
Good luck with that. Okay. I think that's exactly the kind of parent you got to sit down on a one-on-one basis and talk to them about it. Okay. You know, if the kid's name is Susie Smith, you want to be the next Susie Smith. You don't want to be the next Beth Botsford. You don't want to be the next Michael Phelps. Anybody wants to try to be another Michael Phelps, good luck. Okay. You know, you never say never, but you know, the diversity that young man had, you know, yeah, there's people breaking his records, you know, one kid breaking fly, one kid breaking IM, this and that, and that's going to happen. But, you know, the diversity that guy had was, yeah, he was, you know, I mean, his first yard national record was 100 back. He tied Aaron Pearsall, and his first national record in meters was 100 meter fly. But I know that's exactly the type of parent you need to sit down and just chill them out as much as possible and let them know there's a long road ahead. I'm not a believer. You know, many people are under the belief that if you have a fast 10-year-old, they're never going to be any good in the long run. Well, I don't believe that. If you treat them right, if they got to be one of the best 10-year-olds the right way, you know, I mean, if they're swimming two, you know, doubles at 10 years old, they may not make it. But if they're doing the normal, you know, whatever, 4 or 5 days a week, hey, let them go for it. I think, but at the same point, you got to have the parents understand that. I mean, mostly what I tell them, I said, in 5 years, if the only thing your son can say was that I was a champ at 10 years old, is it really going to matter? And,
right.
You know, of course, the answer is no, it doesn't matter. And you know, what we always tell them is we want to see them be successful through 18 and hopefully go swim in college. And that's a long road and nothing to worry about at 8, 9, or 10 years old.
Right. At the end of the day, when you're looking at the career of somebody like Michael or like Beth or any Olympian, what talent is greater, the physiological gifts or the mindset? We're going next level here, Tom.
Yeah, you are. I think, honestly, I don't know that you can do. I don't know if you can be at that level and have a shortcoming on either one of those. I think you sort of have to be both of those to reach that level. And the reason some people don't reach that level is because they don't have both sides of it. Michael is a great swimming mind too.
Right.
You know, he's not only a swimmer; he's a great swimming mind.
And you talked about that early on when we were talking about developing talent. You said you look for those and that level of intelligence.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say, you know, dumb or smart type of thing. It's
right.
It's almost, it's the same thing. It's like, it's even like parenting, to where you got some parents, they may be great parents, but they stink as a swimming parent. Okay. And it's the same thing here where, I'm talking, whatever you think it takes to do the practicing, to take in what a coach tells you, to listen to coach tells you to do this, and you get in there and do, it's the old coachable and non-coachable type of thing. And the earlier you can get these kids to become coachable, the better chance you're going to have. And now even that's hard because mom and dad feel like they have to do everything for their kid. One of the first things I say in my beginning talks, I said, from 6 years old up, if I ever see you carrying your kid's bag, it's not going to happen again. It just, don't do it. I mean, and I preach that. My 3-year-old, when she was taking swim lessons, she carried her own bag in. Learn how to do it.
Absolutely.
I mean, at that point, the bag was a towel or whatever. But I don't want to come off and say, I give them an IQ test to find. I don't mean that, but you can often tell, this kid's got the right mindset, and you certainly have to have a little bit of talent to do something with it. But
this has been so fun, Tom. I've been asking my guests this question. You might have a little bias on this question because it's an NBAC alum who has the world record. But what goes down first, 4 minutes in the men's 400 IM or 8 minutes in the women's 800 free? Ledecky's knocking on that door.
Yeah, I'd have to go with that one.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly have, Chase maybe chasing it, but and it's certainly nothing against him, but 4 minutes in the 400, either one of them is pretty spectacular, but certainly the other one keeps doing ridiculously unbelievable things. So I would have to say the 800.
Tom, if people want to get a hold of you and talk some swimming or have a question for you about age group progression or development, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the easiest way for me is my email address is coachtom@comcast.net.
Now, what about your Insta handle, Coach? What about your Facebook?
I don't have Facebook. Okay. I don't have, I get, everybody tells me I got to get on there, but for various reasons, I've just, in today's world, I'm just, I'll just stay away from that, and Twitter and all. I couldn't begin to tell you how it works or any of that stuff. So I'm still the ancient email, and if I don't know your number, I usually don't answer the phone. So email me, and I'll be glad to talk to you, send it, whatever anybody would want.
Well, Coach, thanks so much. I want to remind our viewers that we are awarding a Fitter and Faster mask and beach towel today, and that's going to go to Megan Hughes.
All right.
So Megan's maiden name was White, Coach. Do you remember a Megan White at NBAC?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for being on, Tom. I look forward to seeing you on deck, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, I hope so. I think good luck to everybody out there. I think all of us are going to have a real challenge come the fall time, and I can't tell you what we're going to do, and because I don't know, but with I know one thing, it's probably for most of us, it's unsustainable to keep going the way we're going with. I was telling Mike earlier before we started this that we're using about 35% more lanes than we normally do, and there's not 35% more lanes indoors in our area. So I don't know what we're going to do, but knock on wood and cross our fingers, and maybe it'll work out.
Absolutely,
All right.
Coach. Thanks so much, and I
Thank
will
you.
see you soon.
Appreciate
Take care,
it.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the program.
All right. Bye.